Welcome back to the podcast From A to Franchisee. I am so excited to have Antonio McBroom join us today from Primo Partners. Antonio and I have known each other for many years, and we had the great blessing to have him keynote our FBR Summit. He is a multi-unit franchisee, multi-unit, multi-brand franchisee, a term in franchising that's called a mumbo. So he is got so much to share with anyone that's considering becoming a franchise owner. When he speaks, the amount of people taking notes is visual. There's always nuggets that you will get from conversations with Antonio. So I'm so thrilled to have him here. Antonio, thank you for joining us to talk to our audience today.
Hello, Michelle. Hello, everyone. I'm so proud to be here and happy that you were able to connect today.
Yeah, and I should also tell people we are getting to talk to a very successful franchise owner. So this is what everyone will be aspiring to. And I know that it's been a lot of hard work. So I want to start by saying that, Antonio, I would love for you to just tell us a little bit about your origin story. Kind of what were you doing? I know that this all happened kind of early, but tell us about what you were doing in school and how you ended up where you are today in any length of time you want to say. I know it's a long, complicated journey, but tell us about that.
Long, complicated, winding road. No, the year was 2004. I was at my orientation at college, University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And I was walking down Franklin Street during orientation, and I saw a now hiring sign at a local ice cream store, Ben and Jerry's. And I love Ben and Jerry's. I love ice cream. I've always been a connoisseur, and so I really wanted to work there. And I started there as a scooper my freshman year. I really scooped myself an amazing opportunity. By my senior year, I was managing the store, and I started asking some crazy questions. It was 2008 by then, so talk about wild economic times like now, right? It was really really wild, and I started asking crazy questions like, what would it take for me to buy this franchise? Not one day, not someday, but by the Sunday that I graduate later this year. And folks thought I was crazy as a 21-year-old college kid, but I went on this journey of learning about franchising, learning about, what does the discovery process look like? And what does it take for me to put together the resources needed to get the yes? And fortunately, 2 days before I graduated, it was a magical weekend because, yes, I graduated, it's Mother's Day, but also I became the first franchise business owner in my family.
It's unbelievable. So you're 20, 21 years old when you're a senior in
Yeah,
college,
yeah,
and
21
you've
years.
been working there for how long?
I've been working there 4 years.
Okay. And so you were like, by the time I hit graduation, this is what I want to do. You knew that this was, and did you end up buying that store or did you buy a different territory?
I ended up buying that store. You know,
Okay.
uh, Shoot for the moon. If you miss, you end up with the stars. So I came in trying to be multi-unit from day one. The person who I worked for had several stores in the area, and I wanted to buy two. And so I did all the stuff needed to buy both locations. And at the end of the day, just wasn't quite there and ready. So I bought the store in Chapel Hill that I worked at, and that was my first one. And I mean, it's kind of like having children. I was able to focus in and spoil that first store for the first 3 or 4 years. It was just that store. It got pretty much all of my energy and focus, and we grew it in a tremendous way just by being hands in, hands on, hands wrapped around. I had my head in the dip case literally all the time, and that gave me all the fundamentals I needed to form a system that I felt I could duplicate. Along with the franchisor system to say, hey, I'm comfortable now taking the leap into multi-unit. And so 2013, I purchased my second store about an hour away, and that was really a big leap for me as a leader because I went from having kind of one location with a lot of part-time and seasonal staff to now I've got two locations that I can hire a manager at each store. And so now I can start leading adults and kind of form a leadership team. And that allowed us to just really start to create synergy. I was able to take 1 plus 1 and make it equal 3. And the reason being is because I had the one store that I originally had plus the second store I purchased, but together their off-premise omni-channel business was a store in and of itself. And so that allowed me to kind of have three different departments, three different units, so to speak. And from there, I built a leadership team that now has propelled us to being the largest, fastest growing Ben and Jerry's operator on the planet. I mean, we've got a couple of dozen locations spanning from Washington, D.C. down to Florida and over to Texas.
Yeah. So, and we could probably have 3 more podcast episodes because I do want to touch upon how you've built your team. I think that is something that a lot of not just franchise owners, but business owners really struggle with. I think putting the intention into the culture they're creating. And I've had a chance to see you with your team at the Ben and Jerry's convention. And I just would love for you to touch upon how mindful were you of that? Do you think because you were part of the staff, or just how did you really build that culture from the start to have this team of people from the scoopers up to this leadership team? Like, what were you thinking about how you did that? Did it just accidentally happen, or was it something that you were really focused on making sure happened within your organization?
I was deeply focused on it, Michelle. I've always been fascinated with leadership. Like any kind of leadership was just something I chose to be a student of, whether it was like leadership in sports, tribal leadership, family leadership, and really servant leadership is what resonates deeply with me and my faith. And so the whole time I was building my franchise business, I really looked at it as a platform for impact and to serve others. I come from a bloodline of educators. And so my mom was a teacher and I knew that I had a responsibility for my family to be that kind of generational changing entrepreneur. I knew that that's what the family looked at me for, and I've been blessed with gifts to do that. At the same time, I'm a teacher at heart. And so I always looked at my business as a classroom. And so it kind of pouring into my staff and my leaders was always something that came pretty natural for me. From there, I just saw it as a powerful secret weapon. I feel like a positive team has so much possesses so much power and can achieve so much more. And so that was a part of what I made my biggest non-negotiable investment. I think that, a lot of times we make investments for marketing in our business or we make investments for a different piece of equipment. From day one, I always said the most important investment I'll make is in my human capital. And from there, it's really served us well.
I just think this is such a great lesson for business leaders in general and business owners because, well, one, in franchising, how you treat your people, I do think is part of your brand's brand standard. It is something that when they leave your organization, how they talk about you does impact your business or make it easier to hire that next hire. So I just really want to encourage business owners to think about their teams. And again, you said it, they are a secret weapon. They will accelerate your dreams and make those realities. So it is the best piece of advice is don't think of these people as just hourly work or filling a role that you need, but how can you grow them while they're helping you grow will just serve you really well as a business owner. So again, that could be a whole nother episode, but I've seen it in action and I've seen your people and there's something really special about it, but so many business lessons as far as how it's helped you get to where you are. So that's great.
Thank you,
So
Michelle.
sometimes I think even people that work for franchisees don't understand franchising. Do you feel like the owner of your business when you were a worker there, like you understood what franchising was being on staff there and you understood kind of the business model? Because I think that there's a lot of opportunity for us to all talk about that as well, in that it's a very misunderstood or um, not even known the types of franchises that are out there that can create wealth for people.
The first couple of years being on staff as a scooper and then as a shift leader, I didn't understand it at all. And I remember my junior year was the time that it clicked. I've been working for about 3 years, and we had a staff meeting, and our franchisee did this exercise called the penny game. And the penny game was, you start, and thinking about it right now, where like pennies are being, pennies are being becoming obsolete, is really a full circle moment. But for those who won't know in the future, when you watch this podcast, a penny is a 1 cent copper piece of current that was once a thing in the early 2000s when me and Michelle were cutting our teeth. So the penny game is 100 of them make a dollar bill. And we would just go to the bank and bust down 100 pennies. And the franchisee went through the exercise of, hey, these 100 pennies are all the sales that we get this month. Let me show you where each penny goes to. And I remember doing that exercise, and it really opened my eyes up as a staff member of 2 things. 1, franchising is hard. 2, franchising can be very, very interesting and competitive and like a game that you could gamify it almost. Like, how do we have more pennies left for the business? And I remember learning about kind of that 5% or that 7%, whatever your different franchise is, that goes to the franchisor, and asking the question of, well, what do we get for that? What's the value that comes from that? And that really unlocked for me how the relationship works. And to me, I love the structure of franchising. The structure actually gives creativity for you to go do what you do well. So I think if I weren't in franchising, I'm not sure I would have been able to go as deep as I have on my leadership development, which is kind of my passion and my secret sauce is pouring into my leaders. If I was having to come up with R&D and product and the marketing campaigns, I'm not sure I'd have the time to focus as deep on that. So I think it's allowed me that space and creativity to go deep on what I love.
That's great perspective. I've never really thought about that. And you're doing what you love, the part of the business you love, and kind of letting their systems and processes run the business or let your team implement those. So that's great. So I'm going to ask you to go back to 2009. It's been a while, but can you think of what surprised you the most when you went from being a staff member to the business owner?
Yeah, yeah, surprise. So I think first was just the change dynamic I went through with my coworkers now that I became the franchisee. I mean, that's a real thing. It's you can't dismiss it. These were folks who I'd worked with for several years, kind of shoulder to shoulder. And so there were a couple that like went for the ride with me and were really excited and in my corner. And those folks, like I still have a relationship with today, and one of which still works with me today. But then there were a couple that were just like, we weren't gonna make it in that dynamic. We were good as coworkers, but as far as me being the operator, it was just a mental block at that time that wasn't gonna allow us to be successful. And I had to realize that and stop forcing the issue of like, hey, let's make this work. So that was one of the biggest learnings. I think the second was just it makes you think about competitive landscape in a totally different way. It's one thing to like be working in a business and you realize, oh, we've got a neighboring ice cream store coming down the block, and it doesn't really affect your paycheck as an employee. But like as a business owner and franchisee, within the first 6 months, within a football's throw of my front door, were not one but two new competitors in my space. And so that was kind of like I went through a sulking period for a couple months, and finally I went through like get mad and do something period. And that kind of energized me in a way that I wouldn't have been energized as a team member. So, it was just I think it was the people dynamic, it was embracing competition, and then, it was the, leaning into weaknesses. I think I had to now embrace that as much as I love operations and serving guests, I've gotta figure out some way to do this administrative stuff that I don't like to sit still and do. And so just kinda leaning into those weaknesses, it made me become a better leader because I had to find people who could do things that I couldn't do that well. And so that was probably that first year's biggest 3 learnings.
That's great, and great memory too, that you can go back and think about that. I also wanna talk about too, the relationship you have with the franchisor. So, we try and be really honest with people to understand, like, this you're not gonna always love working with them or the decisions they're making, but you are part of a system, and you do have to work through those ups and downs. And I think you do a really good job of that, both with your support person that you have in your business, but also the corporate office. What advice would you give to people as far as how you bring up your um, sometimes issues, or just when you have a differing opinion, or you feel like they're not doing the right things for your business specifically? What advice would you give for people to work through those times with the brand, or how you balance kind of not loving the initiative that's being put on you, but you still have to kind of deliver within the scope of what your business is?
Yeah, I think with our franchisor and franchisee relationships, it's no different than other really important relationships in that, you need to keep a positive net value in that relationship account. And I think there's inevitably going to be things that like debit the account, things where you don't see eye to eye. Um, there's a misalignment or disagreement. And so
Yeah.
but on the front end, before you get into the negative, can you deposit the equity and build it up? Is has been one of the keys. I think that, I've made it an intention to have like corporate liaising as one of our things that we do with our team, from me to certain people at the franchisor to even my operational leaders, and they plug in differently with different people with the franchisor. But we're intentional about not just reaching out when things aren't going right and we need something, but just providing general updates for our business. General updates, any opportunities we get to spend time, or if we're having a new opening or some celebration, being inclusive of our field rep in that on the front end, all of that builds the right kind of positive momentum. And then I think the other thing is just when things don't go right, just there's always a nuclear option, but just try to stay away from that. Try not to even put that on the table. And I think that those are some of the biggest learnings I've had as it relates to franchise management. I think there's inevitably going to be change
Right.
within the dynamics too. Our teams change some, and we have a new manager. But more often, from a corporate standpoint, we'll have a new person that we're working with. There's a restructuring that happens. And so now you've got a new person you're working with. Those have been some of the harder times for me, just simply
Yeah.
because I'm such a relational person. And so I get used to, we've got our cadence, and now my field rep or business consultant is gonna go and now be restructured and work with someone else. I mean, those are some of the harder things to do. But I look at in franchising, having this team that supports you, whether it's your franchisor, lawyer, accountant, and looking at it like a kind of 3, 4 year journey of, hey, this is the team that's intact. Let me make the most of this moment, and being open to every 3 or 4 years, there will likely be some reset or change within that team dynamic.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think all humans have a hard time with any kind of change. So just kind of knowing that it's part of doing business and prepping your team for that is a great way to kind of think about that. Like it's inevitable. And especially if you're part of a franchise system, they are supposed to be rolling out things that change and keep you at the top of your consumer's mind. So it comes with being part of a franchise system. How about your franchisee community? So I'm guessing that now that you are one of the largest franchisees of Ben and Jerry's and you've been in the system for a long time, your relationship with the franchisee community has probably changed from when you were new. How do you feel like, especially franchisees that are new or candidates that are coming into the brand, what's the best way to really tap into that franchisee community? How can they help that business? And then I would love for you to go into how has that changed as far as now that you're so seasoned, and I know that you're probably tapped a lot from other franchisees to kind of tap into what's behind all of your success. How do you manage that just to give them the mindset of these people that they're reaching out to that might be the top performers, the biggest in their network, to get some time with them and help their business?
Yeah, one simple word on that one, Michelle: engage. I think bringing like level 10 engagement to the franchise community has been one of the best things about being a part of this Ben and Jerry system. And from the early days when, I was the 21-year-old with kind of wide eyes, not knowing anything about business, and you got folks who had been doing it for 25 or 30 years, and everything I was able to kind of just soak up like a sponge from them. Um, I would say the biggest things to do is if there is a kind of global franchise meeting or franchise gathering, do not miss it. Go plug in, dial in, be fully present, and that's where you get to build authentic relationships. Secondly, I really embrace the idea of franchisee exchanges. And, I mean, so much so we've advocated for it to be just like a fund that our franchisor like matches us
Yeah.
with, to promote exchanges where two franchisees get together. We've got a template of kind of the things we'll cover and stuff we'll talk about. But, you either come see me or I come see you and we just talk business and we see the difference in our operations and get a best practice or two from each other. So that's been really, really important. And then, I think one of the things that I think is about the community that's really impacted my team a lot now that we're larger is really being in a leadership role on like regional meetups. You can do something fun or cool, call it people love competition. So make it a game, make it Olympics. We're going to have the barista Olympics or whatever your concept is, and have a day, leading up to peak season where you get together at a mutually beneficial, kind of location. For me, it's Charlotte. Charlotte's kind of in between everything in the South, and we get a lot of teams together, and we'll kind of talk about the plan for the year, and we'll do some kind of competitive training stuff. And between doing like a competition regionally, doing one-on-one exchanges, and then plugging in to kind of the big annual events, that's really helped me feel part of the community, and I think it allows me to give back in a real unique way as well.
Yeah, I love that. I've not heard of the franchisee exchanges. I jotted that down. That's a great idea. How about can you think of anything that you would have done differently, either in your, I mean, I'm curious what your due diligence looked like before you decided to buy because you were in the brand. So I don't know if you kind of like how you looked at the brand before you invested in it. But can you think of anything that you wish you'd done differently or any mistakes that you made that people could learn from as they kind of jump into franchising?
I mean, I'm constantly making mistakes every day. My team is around actually to just kind of call out my mistakes and correct them because I'm one of those folks that just comes up with all these ideas all the time, and most of the time they're not good ideas. Every now and then it's a great one, and so I had one time where I really lost focus on kind of my main thing, what we were doing in the business. I got so focused on like the weaknesses of the business and the seasonality of the business that I was trying to add too many different concepts and too many different new products and just, kind of going all these different SKUs of retail of special approved products to sell like pretzels or some other outside of our main thing trying to complement the seasonality of the business. And, that was actually the worst year that I had from a business performance standpoint. And I learned to really embrace the Stephen Covey mantra of your main thing is to keep your main thing the main thing. And so for me, that has turned into instead of getting so locked in on, what do I do when it's snow outside and I'm not making any money? How do I sell ice cream? Instead I shifted my mindset to say, how do I use this season of winter to prepare for spring and summer so that I can accelerate the business even higher? And that was a critical change for me to just, you know, get real focused with my time and then also get real focused with menu. A lot of times our franchisors obviously set the menu and mix, but one thing I've noticed with our franchisor and several other successful franchisors is, you know, the more focused the product offering is so that you can deliver kind of elite guest experience and you're not trying to be a jack of all trades, but you
Mhm.
really master what you do, the better. And so those are the types of concepts as I think about the future that I want to be involved with. That's why I love my partnership with Ben and Jerry's and Starbucks. I see them getting more and more focused on their core niche.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about that. You're a franchisee of Starbucks, which is a very small group of people that they allow to do that. So, that I think that's a testament to how you run your business. What about how do you define success now? You're so on top of your game. How do you look at what's next for you? How do you think about how you measure your success and kind of where you're going next? You don't seem like you're ever going to be the person that is going to stop in place where they are.
Can't even slow down, Michelle. That's too
I
close to
know.
Yeah, so at this point in our journey with Primo, um, we've been in business now for 18 years, and we've been more successful than we ever dreamed of from just the size business that we run, the footprint that we have, the people that are within our company. And I think the name of the game for us now is about impact. That's how we're measuring success is how are we impacting the lives of our leaders and how are we sharing what's worked for us to really benefit our community. And so I've kind of pivoted that and made it one of our key metrics that we measure. We by the end of this decade, we want to have invested over $10 million in leadership enlightenment. And so when I talk about the most important investment we make every year is in our leaders in org development. I mean, we do kind of best in class leadership training and development in a very robust way. We've got one on our staff who their whole job is exclusively they're the high performance coach and they coach our
Okay.
unit managers. So they're not the unit manager's boss. They're just an extra resource as kind of a life coach for our unit managers. And so continue to make those investments so that by the end of the decade, we can say we've invested over $10 million in leadership enlightenment. That's what is driving us. That's what we're doing is growing leaders. We're halfway there right now. So, it took us
Unbelievable.
took us 18 years to get halfway there, but I'm committed that in 4 years that we can close the gap. And I'm really excited to do that.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I think so you've got this, I would say, kind of like bigger empire. I want to go back to the first one when you're about to graduate from college. How did you finance your first two stores? How did you finance the first store?
Yeah, I was gritty. I was gritty. So back then, it's 2008 recession. Um,
Ugh.
The store that I purchased was really struggling because they were doing a really big mixed use development on that side of the road, so nobody was walking in front of it, and the lease was coming up. So I was able to purchase that store for about a fourth of the cost of a normal store, but I was taking a big risk. I'm taking a store that is not generating profit, but I purchased it really low saying, "Hey, I'm gonna get in here, roll my sleeves up, and do whatever it takes, even if I've gotta stay in here to 4 AM selling ice cream. After the bars let out, Imma see if I can get a couple people to stagger in here and buy ice cream cone. I'm gonna do whatever it takes. So I purchased that store at a deep discount, and we purchased it cash. So me and my business partner Eric, who's a few years older than me, we did the venture together. I had the operational experience. He was already doing kind of his corporate engineering job. So collectively, we put our stuff together, and that's how we qualified as young franchisees. Neither one of us could stand on our own, but together we were kind of where we needed to be. And so we put our cash together to close it. We had some real estate we'd purchased early, and we used it as collateral to do like a line of credit for the working capital and stuff. And that's how we purchased the first one. Going to the second one, we kind of recouped our cash, had some savings, and it was about to cover half the cost of the business, and we had the seller do a seller note for the other half. And it only took us 2 years to pay him back. And since then, we kind of learned to not be as old school as we were. At that time, we were really like not open to banking very, very much. We had uncles who told us, "Hey, whatever you want, go save cash, go buy it." And we were kind of, and that's why it took us 4 or 5 years to
Yeah.
do the second store.
It's a great
It
theory. It just takes longer.
it just takes a long time. And so as we did the second store, we recouped that cash, and then it was like, okay, we want to grow again. We're about to do the third, and then we met a banker who was like, "Hey, you guys are really doing a good job. I can give you the cash if you want to go from 2 to 5. Or you can use all your cash and go from 2 to 3." And we thought about it, we read the numbers, and we took a big, big leap and said, "Okay, we'll go from 2 to 5 this year in 2017." And that's what started our faster momentum.
So, do you have any advice for people that are thinking about risk or trying to not mitigate it, but like you have to be comfortable with it. So, was there anything, is it just a natural part of your ethos that you're like, "Okay, we're going to just take this shot," or is there any kind of advice you would give to people as they're looking at something that has that level of risk?
I think the key is to balance risk. I mean, every day in life is a risk. So there's no way to just be immune to risk at all. I do have a high risk tolerance, but as I'm getting older, as I've been doing this now for 18 plus years, got a 16-year-old daughter, Michelle, we've got to start thinking kind of about the next generation. And so I can't just sign my name and put all my money into things like I used to whenever I was 21 and was only responsible for myself. So so how do I balance risk? And I think the ways you balance it is you for one, you know, be purposeful in drawing a line between personal assets and business assets,
Great
and
advice.
when possible, not secure everything for the business with everything personally. I also think, there are different kind of insurance profiles to have in place that cover you if things go wrong. And then I think, having partners um, is also a way to kind of de-risk as you go along. So I've used that collectively to kind of balance and manage my risk as I've grown.
I love that. I think everyone's risk does change through it, but I think that that first unit, that first location is probably the hardest hurdle for anyone that's thinking about doing this. It's the scariest.
Yeah,
So that's
you
good.
got to take the
That's
leap.
good. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So if you could control the way that people leave this episode, what they're thinking about, what's the one takeaway you would want to make sure anyone considering going into business for themselves or becoming a franchisee would take away from your experience or from your advice that you've put out today?
The biggest takeaway that I love for everyone to walk away from this with is the the most the most valuable and rewarding part of franchising. Um, is not the economics and the financial wherewithal that allows you to create. It's not even the kind of lifestyle and the freedom it gives you as a business owner and operator. It's really the ability it gives you to impact others. It gives you a platform that you can really pour into the people that come into your business and you serve every day with your product. You can pour into the people that you work with and closely as part of their lives and as a leader in their lives. And it also gives you just a platform to really be a pillar in your community. And I think that the folks who I've observed and mentored under that embrace that focus in franchising are the ones that have been wildly successful in every other aspect.
Yeah, that's such great advice. Antonio, I just always enjoy talking with you. You have so much to offer, and I hope that people are inspired by your story because you've really done it all. And I was going to ask you if you had to choose between hustle or education, which would you say is more important? But I don't know that I want to make you make that choice because you certainly and you embody both of those things. So
You're a better
I
man.
just I just love it. I just love it. I always love speaking with you. I love your team. Love cheering you on. So really appreciate you kind of sharing your story and giving hope to people that might be like, how would I ever even get started or where could this go? I think this has been a really powerful conversation for them. So thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
Of course, Michelle. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. Hit